The letter was sitting right there on the kitchen table when my mother picked it up, read the first 2 lines, and set it back down without a word. Not a single word. That letter said my daughter Ismeria had been named valedictorian of her graduating class, 4.0 GPA across 4 years, a merit scholarship to Cornell University worth $68,000 per year, the kind of news that most families would have been screaming about from their front porch. My mother Corinne set it down, folded her hands and said, "We probably should not do a big celebration right now." I looked at her, I waited. She continued, completely calm, like she was reading off a grocery list. "Amadeus just got confirmed for the varsity football team next week. If we celebrate both things at the same time, it is going to split everyone's attention, and that is not fair to him. He has worked so hard for this." My father Gerald was sitting across the table. He nodded, slowly, like what she had just said made complete and total sense. "Amadeus is my nephew. He is the son of my older brother Ilarion. He had just made the varsity team at his high school. My daughter had just earned a full academic scholarship to one of the most competitive universities in the country. And the decision at that table, made without anyone asking me a single thing, was that we needed to protect the spotlight for the high school varsity football announcement. I picked up the letter, I looked at it for a moment, then I set it back down and took a long drink of water. I did not raise my voice, I did not push back right then, because here is the thing that nobody at that table understood in that moment. I was not shocked, I was not even surprised. What I felt was something much quieter than anger and much more final. Because this was not the first time, it was never the first time, it had never been the first time in my entire life. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. If you have ever sat at a table and felt completely invisible to the people who were supposed to see you most, drop a comment below and tell me where you are watching from right now. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do that now, because this story is going to take you somewhere real, and I want you with me for all of it. Hit that like button too if you are already feeling what I am feeling in this moment, because we are just getting started. Now let me take you back to where this pattern actually began. I am 37 years old. I have lived in Nashville, Tennessee my whole life, same city my parents raised us in, same streets, same kind of summer heat. My brother Ilarion is 4 years older than me, and from the time I was old enough to understand what attention looked like in a family, I understood that his name was the one that lit the room up. I want to be precise about this because I spent a long time telling myself I was exaggerating. I was not exaggerating. When I was 10 years old, I won first place at the county science fair. It was not a small deal. I had built a working water filtration model using materials I had collected myself over 3 months. My teacher told my parents it was the most sophisticated project she had seen from a student my age in years. My parents said, "That is good, honey," at dinner. My father patted my shoulder once. And then the conversation moved, within about 4 minutes, to Ilarion's upcoming game that Friday and whether they needed to leave work early to get good seats. There was no celebration, there was no phone call to the grandparents, there was no photograph on the wall, there was a pat on the shoulder and then the room moved on. When Ilarion scored his first touchdown in a school-level game, my father drove the whole family 2 hours to be in the stands. He bought pizza for half the neighborhood afterward. My mother called every relative she had a number for. I sat in the back seat of the car on the drive home holding a library book I had checked out because I had finished my homework and I did not know what else to do with myself. Nobody asked how my week had been. When I was 15, I was selected for the Tennessee statewide academic excellence program. 12 students from across the entire state were chosen. I came home with the letter and handed it to my mother. She read it and looked up at me and said, "Does this help you get a sports scholarship?" I told her it was an academic program. She said, "Oh," and then told me that Ilarion's coach had called to say he thought Ilarion had real potential for a college-level career. That was the whole conversation. When I was 18 and received my college acceptance letter with a partial academic scholarship, my father's first response was to ask why I had not applied somewhere closer to keep costs down. That same year, Ilarion received a full football scholarship to a university 3 states away. My parents threw a block party. They hung a banner across the front of the house. They invited the entire street. They ordered a custom cake. I watched all of it from the side yard and told myself it was fine, that I would build something of my own, that it did not matter. I kept telling myself that for a long time, when I was 25 and called home to say I had been promoted to senior coordinator at my company, my mother said, "That is wonderful," and then immediately asked if I had seen the article someone had shared about Alarian's team making the regional playoffs. 27 years. That is how long I had been quietly cataloguing these moments and telling myself they did not add up to anything. The night after that dinner where my mother told me not to celebrate Ismeria's valedictorian honour, I sat in my kitchen at 2 a.m. Marcus, my husband, had gone to bed. The house was quiet. I had Ismeria's letter in my hands and I sat there and I did not cry. I did not feel sorry for myself. What I felt was clarity, the kind that only comes when you stop arguing with something you have known for a long time. I had been waiting for my parents to see me the way they saw Alarian. That was not going to happen, not because they were cruel people, but because a pattern that runs 27 years deep does not correct itself because you keep being patient. I got up, went to the bedroom door and woke Marcus. I told him we were going to plan Ismeria's graduation celebration ourselves. We were not going to ask for permission. We were not going to wait for a convenient time that did not interfere with anyone else's news cycle. Marcus looked at me for a moment and then said, "I thought you were going to say that about 10 years ago." He was not wrong. The next morning I called my mother. I did not ease into it. I told her that we were organizing a celebration for Ismeria and that she and my father were welcome to come. I told her that if their concern was that it would take attention away from Amadeus, then they did not have to attend. There was a silence on the line. Then my mother said she thought I was being selfish. I said I understood that was how she saw it. She hung up. I put the phone down and started making a guest list. We did not need a venue. We did not need a caterer or a formal invitation or anyone's blessing. Marcus and I rented a section of the outdoor space at a park 2 blocks from our house in Nashville, set up tables, strung up some lights and made a sign that read, "Ismeria Valedictorian, Cornell University, class of this year." Ismeria's best friend Priya showed up early on the morning of the party to help set up. She brought her mother, who brought food. 2 of my closest colleagues from work came with their families. Our neighbours who had watched Ismeria grow up came and brought their kids. By the time the afternoon started, there were over 30 people in that space, and every single one of them was there because they genuinely wanted to celebrate her. My parents did not come. Alarian did not come. At one point during the afternoon, Ismeria stood up without being asked and spoke to everyone there. She was not prepared. She just stood up and said what was on her mind. She thanked Marcus and me. She said that the thing she had learned from watching me her whole life was not how to get good grades. She said what she had learned was that you do not need anyone's permission to acknowledge your own accomplishments. She said she hoped she always remembered that. I looked at the fence post to my left for about 30 seconds and breathed steadily until I was sure I was not going to cry in front of 30 people. 3 months after that party, I was called into my director's office and offered the brand manager position, national scope, with a salary increase of $17,000 annually. I accepted on the spot. I drove home, cooked dinner and told Marcus over the meal. I did not call my parents, and for the first time in my adult life, I noticed the absence of that impulse and did not feel guilt about it. I felt relief. When August came, Marcus and I packed Ismeria's things into the car and drove 9 hours to Ithaca, New York, to move her into her dormitory at Cornell. We spent the day carrying boxes and meeting her roommate and figuring out where the dining hall was. That evening, the 3 of us sat at a small restaurant near campus and had dinner together. No agenda, no performance, no managing of anyone else's feelings. Just the 3 of us eating pasta and talking about what the next 4 years might look like for her. On the drive back to Nashville the following day, I stopped at a rest area in Virginia to fill the tank and get coffee. I sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes before getting back on the road. I thought about the fact that I had just dropped my daughter off at an Ivy League university on a scholarship worth more than most people's annual salaries, that I had a career I had built myself, a husband who showed up the way I needed him to, a home that felt like mine. I sat with all of that and recognized without drama that I did not feel like anything was missing. That was new, that feeling was genuinely new. About 2 months into Ismeria's first semester at Cornell, she showed me a message on her phone. Amadeus had reached out to her through social media. His message was straightforward. He said he had heard what happened with the celebration and that he had not known his grandmother said those things until after the fact. He said he was sorry. He said he did not think it was right. I read the message twice. I thought about it for 2 days. Then I told Ismeria that if she wanted to invite him to dinner, that was her decision to make and I would support it. She invited him. He drove over on a Saturday evening. He was 20 years old, quieter than I expected, and he spent the first part of dinner being careful with his words in a way that told me he had been thinking about what he wanted to say. Partway through the meal he told us that he did not actually want to play football. He said he had never wanted to play football. He said the expectation had been placed on him from the time he was old enough to hold a ball because he was a Larian's son, and that was what a Larian's son was supposed to do. He said he wanted to study graphic design. He had been looking at programs and had found one at Cornell that interested him. I looked at this 20-year-old sitting across from me at my kitchen table, and I recognized something in the way he was carrying himself. The careful posture of someone who had spent years not saying the thing they actually thought. The following week, a Larian called me. His tone was sharp from the first word. He said I was pulling his son into my problems with the family. I told him that Amadeus had reached out to Ismeria on his own, that he was an adult, and that I did not have a problem with my family. I had a boundary with behavior. Larian told me I had always had a problem with him, and that this was just another way I was expressing it. I told him that was not what was happening. He ended the call. 2 days later, Larian appeared at my front door on a Tuesday evening without any notice. He knocked repeatedly and loudly. I opened the door but did not step back to invite him in. He stood in the doorway and told me at a raised volume that I had always been jealous of him from the time we were children, and that I was using his son to get back at him for something he had never done to me. I did not raise my voice. I looked at him directly and said, "Larian, I have no reason to be jealous of anyone when my daughter is at Cornell on a scholarship, and you are standing outside my door at 8 in the evening to yell at me. Go home." I closed the door. The campaign did not stop there. My mother called 3 days later. She told me the situation was making her physically unwell. She said I was tearing the family apart. My father sent a text message informing me that if I did not apologize to Larian, I should not expect an invitation home for Thanksgiving. A few days after that, a woman named Beatrice, my father's cousin who I had seen perhaps 4 times in my adult life, called me to say that she had heard what was going on and that she thought I was being unkind and small-minded. I said to Beatrice, "You do not have enough information about this situation to have a useful opinion." Then I ended the call and blocked her number. I did not post anything publicly. I did not recruit anyone to my side. I did not explain myself to extended family members who called with second-hand information. I went to work. I came home. I kept responding to Amadeus when he sent questions about Cornell's graphic design program. I kept living the life I had built. About 3 months after Larian showed up at my door, my mother called to tell me that she and my father wanted to come visit. It was not phrased as a question. I told her they were welcome to come, and then I laid out 3 conditions before she could say anything else. First, I told her that no part of the visit would involve pressure on me to apologize to Larian or to revisit decisions I had already made. Second, I told her that Thanksgiving was not going to be held over my head as leverage in any future conversation. Third, I told her that if the purpose of the visit was to talk me into a position I had already moved away from, I would ask them to leave, and I would not be apologetic about doing so. My mother said she understood. They drove up to Nashville the following Saturday. The first part of the evening was quiet, careful. My mother said something about the kitchen. My father talked about the drive. The conversation moved in short, deliberate sentences the way conversations do when everyone in the room is aware that something real is underneath the surface and nobody is sure yet who is going to say it first. Then Ismeria called on video from her dormitory. She was telling us about a presentation she had given in her biology seminar, that her professor had asked her to expand it into an independent research proposal. She was animated and specific and completely herself. I watched my mother's face while Ismeria talked. I watched something shift in my mother's expression, not a dramatic shift. Just a quiet adjustment, the kind a person's face makes when they are recalibrating something they had previously decided. After the call ended, I asked my parents to stay at the table. I did not have notes. I did not prepare a speech. I told them I wanted to walk through some specific things that had happened, not to assign blame, but because I needed them to understand the full picture of what I had been carrying and for how long. I told them about the science fair when I was 10. I told them about the drive they took to see Larian's touchdown and the way I sat in the back seat with a library book. I told them about the Tennessee statewide academic excellence program and my mother asking whether it would help with a sports scholarship. I told them about my college acceptance and the way that conversation lasted less than 2 minutes before shifting to Ilarian's football news. I told them about calling home at 25 to say I had been promoted and the conversation turning to Ilarian's playoff article within 30 seconds. I told each story once. I did not repeat myself. I did not editorialize. I just laid them out in order, one after another, the way you lay out documents when you want someone to understand a sequence clearly. Then I put Ismeria's Cornell scholarship letter on the table, the one my mother had set down without a word at that dinner. $68,000 per year, valedictorian. I put it on the table and I left it there. I said, "This is the first time in my adult life that I did not need your approval to celebrate something. I want you to understand that I am not saying this to hurt you. I am saying it so you know what it cost me to get to this point, and why I made the choices I made." My mother was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I thought I was doing the best I knew how to do, but sitting here and hearing you say all of this, I think what I knew was not enough." My father picked up the letter, he read it, he put it down with both hands carefully. He did not say much, but he read every word. That was not a resolution. One conversation does not undo 27 years, but it was the first time in my life that I said everything I needed to say, and both of my parents sat there and listened to all of it. Before they left that evening, I told them clearly what I needed going forward. If they wanted to be present in Ismeria's life, they needed to hold her in the same regard they held Amadeus, not higher, just equal. If they wanted to be present in my life, they needed to stop rewriting the history of what had happened and start from where we actually were. They did not have to be perfect, but they needed to be honest. My mother nodded, my father nodded. That was where we left it. Cornell family weekend, 1 year later. Marcus and I drove up to Ithaca on a Friday morning, took our time on the road, stopped for breakfast at a place we found in a small town off the highway in Pennsylvania. We were not rushing. We were not managing anyone else's schedule or expectations. We arrived on campus in the early afternoon with time to walk around before the event started. Ismeria came out to meet us wearing a Cornell sweatshirt she had worn until it was soft from washing. She had Amadeus with her. He had enrolled in the graphic design program at Cornell that fall. He had left the football expectation behind entirely. He looked different from the young man who had sat at my kitchen table the previous year, not physically different, but the carefulness in the way he carried himself was gone. He stood up straight and spoke in a normal register and made eye contact without looking like he was bracing for something. My parents were there too. This was the first time since that kitchen table confrontation that all of us had been in the same place. Ilarian was not there. He had not been invited, and his absence was not something I spent any time thinking about that day. We walked the campus together. My mother asked Ismeria specific questions about her coursework. Not general questions, specific ones, the kind you ask when you have been paying attention. My father told Amadeus he was proud of him for going after what he actually wanted. Amadeus said thank you, and I watched him absorb that without flinching. At one point in the afternoon, we were standing near the lake on the edge of campus. Ismeria was showing Corinne the building where her biology seminar met. My mother was leaning in to look where Ismeria was pointing and asking a follow-up question. They were just talking, naturally, without any performance. Amadeus came and stood next to me. We watched them for a moment, then he said quietly, "Thank you for not closing the door on me." I looked at him and said, "Thank you for knocking the right way." That was the whole exchange. It was enough. I heard through my mother in the months that followed that Ilarian and his wife had started couples counseling. She mentioned it without commentary, and I received it the same way. What happens in Ilarian's life is Ilarian's to work out. I hope he finds what he needs. That is the full extent of what I feel about it. The scholarship letter from Cornell is framed and hanging in our living room in Nashville. Marcus suggested it. I agreed. Not as a trophy, not as a statement, but as a reminder of the specific evening when I stopped asking for permission to acknowledge what my family had built. Here is what I know now that I did not know clearly enough when I was 10 years old, sitting at a table waiting to be seen. The boundaries that are the most difficult to draw are not the ones between you and people who have hurt you carelessly. They are the ones between you and people you love deeply who have been hurting you without knowing it, or without stopping even when they did know it. Drawing that line does not feel like power. It feels like loss at first, but what you find on the other side of that line is not emptiness. It is room to be exactly who you are without shrinking. Room to celebrate your daughter at full volume in a park with 30 people who actually showed up. Room to drive to Cornell on a Friday morning without a knot in your stomach. Room to stand next to a lake and feel like you are exactly where you belong. That is what I found, and I want that for every single person who has ever sat in a room full of family and felt like the least important person there. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to draw a line with someone you loved in order to protect yourself or your children? What did that cost you, and what did you find on the other side? Tell me in the comments, because I read every single one and your stories matter to me. If this video reached something in you today, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not because I am asking for numbers, but because there is someone in your life right now who is sitting at a table feeling invisible, and they need to know they are not alone. Hit the like button if you stayed with me all the way through. Subscribe if you want to keep having these conversations, because I am not done telling the truth, and I do not plan to stop anytime soon. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I hope you walk away from this today feeling a little less alone and a little more certain that your story deserves to be told at full volume.